welcome to the show, and I appreciate you coming on today, sir. This is one of the episodes of Pale Blue Nexus, and we'll go with Victor for now. And I
Yes,
welcome
please.
and thank you, and please give yourself an introduction and let us know about your practice and your project, and basically about yourself.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. First of all, thank you for this invitation. And I know your channel, your podcast. I know it quite well now. And I know about you as well. I don't know how many people know you, but and your business history, but it's quite impressive there. So thank you very much for this invitation. You are former IBM, you are former JP Morgan, you invented ways of business, and so this is quite a privilege for me. So thank you very much for this talk between us today. As I have already told you before, this, and you have already suggested as well, this is a talk, and so there's no media training involved in it, and so I don't know what your specific questions will be, and so this is quite spontaneous as a conversation, and so it's very good. For once, it's very good to have a good talk, recorded talk like this one. So thank you very much. About myself, as you asked, my name is Victor Lugli, and if you cannot pronounce Lugli, that's okay as well. So it's Lugli, but it's because it's Italian. You know, I'm Italian, and I'm talking to you today from São Paulo, Brazil, from one of our offices, and as my business activity, I am managing partner of Lugli, the Lugli Group. There is an organization that operates globally within the scopes of investments, consultancy, and corporate or large scale corporate training. So this is me, Johan. Anything you want to know more about myself and my activities, I'm here to answer to your questions.
Yeah, you're a fascinating guy, and
Thank you.
one of the things I'm fascinated about is your research and your work in sort of like the neuroscience.
Yes.
And we talked about that when we first met, and I find that quite interesting. You know, the mammal brain is just very complex, and we don't know much about it. Actually, we do know a lot about it. I just don't think it's much into the forefront of popular sort of knowledge.
Yes.
What would you think about that? Like, is that a true statement?
Yes, it's absolutely true. Actually, I like to mention it because there is a huge gap between what we know from in the scientific realm and scientific context. Academically speaking, we know very much already about how our brain works. And it gained traction from the 70s, actually, because there was a certain growth from the psychological studies and psychological point of view, technology as well. So we know a lot about how our brain works. And, but, you know, so the public, let's call it this way, the naive public, doesn't know about it, does not know, how they are, I think the most complex, part of who they are works. And so this is quite interesting, and I like to mention it because we bridged that gap. And so as a company, this I can say it with quite calmly, quite specifically. This is one of our biggest competitive advantages, because we take something that is very, very specific, and we create a link between our brain, our mental dynamics, scientifically speaking, to business practice, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And so we apply it in everything we do and everything we are. But you asked me about my personal research and how I arrived here, probably. So about my history from an academic point of view, I started studying politics sciences. I have my Italian origin, an Italian person from I have always studied in Italy. And so as a kid. And so the first approach Italy gives you to knowledge is, and from this specific knowledge, is from philosophy, actually. And so I found myself very, 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 let's say, in love maybe with the rhetorical aspects of knowledge. And so from this on, I understood, as during my growth, my personal intellectual also growth, I understood the relationship between rhetorics and behavior, etc., and the use of it in the most practical way. I remember I was fascinated, for example, with the speech of Menenio Agrippa, who addressed a crowd, was during a rebellion, and he addressed a crowd from a hill in Rome, and he managed to address them in a strategic way. And so this is, since I remember, this was one of my first visions about how was the relationship between the rhetorical knowledge and a practical application was. And so this is just, I went to ancient history now, ancient Rome now, just for you to understand. I have always pursued this. I have always been in love with this kind of knowledge, this type of knowledge. And so because of this, my first field of study was political sciences, and then during a huge series of personal events as well as anyone, I decided to study psychology as well. And from psychology, I went directly to neuropsychology and cognitive neuroscience. And so, and maybe many people do not know this, but there are many levels of neuroscientific knowledge, and the cognitive neuroscience one is about the way, as hierarchically speaking, is the most advanced one. Mm-hmm. Because it studies the way our brain creates our mind experience, let's say. And so I got fascinated by this kind of study, and when I started it, I was already an entrepreneur. I was already a businessman, and but I think that period of time in my life was the one when I, maybe just arrogantly speaking, but it was my intelligence peak in my life, and so I felt like this because it was very stimulating for me, and so I had the privilege to perceive these and to make the most of it. And so I had privileged access to something that was my passion and have always been since then. And so the research came from this period of time. And I think the most important line of research of that period that I faced and I had access to was the relation between the brain and consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And so I studied it with proper lines of research from a scientific point of view. So using a scientific approach, we studied consciousness through specific fMRI protocols, MEG, protocols, etc. And so it was absolutely interesting and fascinating for me. And from that, I created our lines of research in the through Lugli Group and neuromarketing, etc. Everything we do from that point of view. And so from this, I have a third line of study that came after was finance. And so I have these three fields covered, let's say, academically speaking. And but from neuroscience, I applied it into neuromarketing, and from this specifically and my personal business experience, I created a conceptual framework. I think it's the conceptual framework of everything we do at Lugli Group that is named, commercially speaking, is named neuroinductive practice. And so this is somehow the story and where it comes from. I think I wanted to explain this in the simplest way possible because of the people. I don't know how much they could understand the neuroscientific principles, but the way we apply it to business, it's quite explicit. And so this is what I do and where this knowledge comes from. I think it's was it clear? Was it understandable?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like my audience and myself would be interested in knowing how can we, in your academic background and your research and your experience dealing with founders and CEOs, and seeing how businesses play out, what are some of the things that you would recommend or you would see like a lot of these business owners and CEOs don't apply on a regular basis that you would like them to apply? Like, is there something that you can see in a CEO and says, okay, that guy's going to be successful, he's going to have a successful company? Is there a pattern there, or is it largely based on an individual by individual basis?
There is a pattern actually, and if you ask me to identify it, to make it explicit to your audience, we have to start from the let's say, conceptually speaking, we have in everything we do, if we apply these concepts I'm telling you about, for example, we apply to leadership, we apply to sales, we apply to negotiation, etc., etc. We understand that we have elements that we begin from. And so element, for example, in sales, it's your product, and I think the most important ability we have from this specific point of view and in general in business is the ability to create a link between and a a proper and instrumental link between what we have as an element and the benefits that that element create. Okay, so what does it mean? That we have something that by itself is just a material, element. So something that we have also abstract one, like in leadership. So the concept of what we do, etc., and to transform all this into a benefit, but the benefit, and now we have an upgrade of what I'm telling you about. The benefit must be applicable to our interlocutor. There can be a business partner, there can be, to whom you are addressing your elevator speech. For example, it's your pitch, and or your customer. It's the same principle. There is a principle of influence, but let's say, funnily speaking, it's business, on steroids, let's say, because yes, it's funny to say, but to tell you like this, but what is the main feature there? That you understand your interlocutor and you apply what you have into his priorities. So I think the proper way to address it is to understand that the characteristic that defines successful business men or business people like the ones you mentioned before is this paradigm shift. What you are and what you have is not that important, but what you create from the link you can create from what you have at your disposal and the beneficial aspect of it to your interlocutor is fundamental. And it is the basis for anything we do from a business point of view. And so I identify this importance, let's say, this successful pattern from specifically this. So, this ability. And, it can be taught. It can be, learned, let's say, but many people don't understand that this is the main framework from which start anything you do in business. And this is also what I do is on a daily basis. The ability. I think if you ask me if I have superpowers, I would answer they're not super. They are very, very human. Human powers, and that's it. That's these I'm telling you about now.
There's something that I've noticed. Call it just an instinct, but today, with the rise of AI, there is a lack of there's an explosion of product. There's an explosion of content. And the one thing that's lessened because of that is trust between customer and the vendor. So there's a lack of trust. There's a recession in trust happening right now. And that's very interesting. There's a lot of people creating different types of products. They're great products, but there's a lack of trust happening. And it's one of the reasons that I produce this podcast, and I've always done authentic sort of conversations like this. Good. Do you notice that too as well? Have you noticed people are a little bit more skeptical? Customers are skeptical. Cold emails are not as effective. Certain things that you've done in the past may not work today.
I completely agree with your point of view. Actually, it can be directly linked to what I told you before. I have just told you about the necessity of the creation of this link between what you have at your disposal and the beneficial aspect to your interlocutor. And so something like this demands a level of specificity that is huge, that is very, very high. And so this is why AI does not apply perfectly to the level of specificity you have to gain in terms of dialogue, in terms of everything you have and the way you propose it. And there's a reason why, because AI, first of all, the I part in AI is not a proper, it's not intelligence. Okay? It's a very effective way to manage and to elaborate data. Okay? But it's not an intelligence. The level of intelligence humans have is absolutely superior to that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And so this is something that only who understand human beings can understand this. And so properly, I mean. So neuroscience tells you this. There's no way it cannot tell you this. And so the level of specificity in the link between who you are and your interlocutor cannot be determined by a system that works on average or averages. Okay.
Right.
And that's exactly what AI does. AI takes huge amounts of data. It parameterizes it, and creates averages from it. And so you have huge batches of data regarding a topic, regarding anything you want to, and from the internet, and create something that is based on a huge average of it.
This absolutely makes sense, because what I see AI companies doing, large language models and such, is like they're trying to put more data and specificity inside their models in order to mimic the average level of intelligence that goes up. But I don't think
it's the contrary.
Yeah, it is the contrary, because things are always shifting and things are always moving. There's different things in the world that would shift. There's narratives that will change, and it's hard to keep up with that. Yeah.
Yes. Actually, if you use artificial intelligence as a specific tool, I mean, you have a framework, you have a paradigm that you want to work upon through artificial intelligence. Okay. Let's see, for example, in Formula One, I talk to Formula One managers, for example, and the way they use artificial intelligence is through something they start from, that is theirs, that's specifically determined by them, and use AI as a tool. Is just an example, because Formula One, for example, as any business, is determined by the level of efficiency of what they do. But if you have a company and you work on huge amounts of data, you cannot expect but to create averages. Yeah. And so the moment you address to a customer or to a business partner, etc., is based on average. And so this is quite dangerous from a specificity and efficiency point of view that business demands.
Yeah. Yeah. And absolutely. I think there is a level of specificity that it's always changing, and it's getting harder and harder to persuade,
Yes.
and persuasion is ahead of the curve when it comes to, maybe they should come up with artificial persuasion. I don't think it can happen.
Just okay. Let's make an example about this specifically. You start from a knowledge that is based, for example, marketing. Okay. You start from something that, conceptually speaking, is the unique selling proposal. Okay, that is something that you and only you can deliver. Okay, to the public, to your market, etc., and you are aware of it and you use it, etc., strategically in your sales, etc., the way you address your public. Now, you have this, and every founder today I know that uses something that is merely informatic says, we use artificial intelligence to do this. Everyone is telling me the same. And so how do I perceive your uniqueness? How do I perceive your unique selling proposal there? Okay, so we have a proprietary way of addressing AI. Okay, this is another way to address it, and this is proper. But not many do this these days, and it's always the same speech now.
Yeah,
this is wrong. This is specifically wrong. So we started from something that was specifically determined. That is the marketing concept, unique selling proposal, etc. And you come today with your pitch, and that you put your effort on, etc., and say something that everybody is saying. So this is just wrong, So what do you have of uniquely determined, and what is the effect that this uniqueness you have on? What is the effect of this to your public, to your market, etc.? And so this is the simple basis of business, but we are losing it somehow because of the averages that we are creating. So, and more, and this will become a more specific average.
So it seems to me like the business community, the founder community, the entrepreneurial community is undergoing a shift from, hey, I can make a web page. Well, now everyone can make a web page. There's just a level of averageness that has sort of up the bar. So now everybody needs to go above that and to the next level of, let's raise the bar, right? In terms of your unique selling proposition.
But it has always been like this. But now today you have an explosion of this, but it has always been like this. Why? Because it's called competitiveness.
Yeah.
You have to set the bar higher than your competitor. But you have to understand what your competitor is, and you have to understand as well. You have to understand what you have of, your uniqueness, and the paradigm shift I was telling you about, the beneficial aspect of it, precisely for your interlocutor. Interlocutor can be, for example, an investor that you are talking to during a pitch, or your large market, etc., etc. So the more precise you have this clear in your mind, the more you can gain anything you desire from it. And so now the behavioral part, the behavioral aspect of it is mainly the ability to determine who your interlocutor are and the way he moves, what his priorities are, etc., etc., etc. And so just for you to understand, this is quite specific, and it must be. And so now just, everybody's doing something. They are not getting specific about what they're doing, and they are not getting specific of the benefits that they are promoting, and they are not being specific on about their interlocutors, the definition of it. So we have more tools at our disposal, but you're not using the proper way. So we have to understand this, because you cannot be blind on it.
I just had a image in my head. I don't know if F1 is the analogy here, but maybe it's NASCAR. But everybody has the same engine in the car. It's just the driver now needs to know where to steer if it's not a straightforward track, but the track is open. And everybody has the same power in a way with these models.
Yes, it does not apply to Formula One specifically, but yes, your example is correct. So what makes you different? And so this is the starting point of any business, and so we are losing it somehow. And I perceive it also. I talk to many people from different perspectives, and in different. I have 3 operations going on through Lugli Group, and so we have different ways to approach each one of them, and each demand of those. And so we understand this from many points of view, and from each one of these points of view, we perceive the exact same thing. So you have to go very, very high in terms of the specificity, efficiency demand, to understand that people are acting the proper way from this point of view. And the Formula One example is exactly this. So how do you turn yourself to be relevant? And they use it. They use their tools in the proper way. If just imagine if they didn't.
Yeah,
they would lose everything. And so you have founders, you have entrepreneurs, etc. That you must understand that if you don't do it the proper way, you're just losing money and possibilities. That is the main reason why you should be getting up in the morning. Create possibilities, create things, etc. Please.
I think you're absolutely right. It's like we have such great tools now, and a lot of people don't know what to build. They don't know where to steer. They don't know what to focus on. And I think it's an interesting time that even myself, it's like I can build so many things. I can open up my dev tools, and they're quite powerful and amazing.
Yes.
It's just, what do you want to build? What do you want? Where's the unique selling proposition? Where's the value that's being created? Where's the benefits that are being created? And I guess you're seeing this on a larger level. But the one thing I'm also interested in is there are organizations that are a lot slower to move. There are huge organizations that are possibly being disrupted. And the acquisitions are happening quite fast because big organizations are seeing smaller organizations meet that product market fit quite quickly. And they're just, let's bring you in-house type of thing, right? Like, are you seeing a lot of that?
Yes. About speed. Yes, everything is moving quite faster, and you have finance that is moving quite fast as well, and you have more access nowadays. And you have, when you start to operate bigger and bigger, you start to operate globally.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have a global scope, and in everything you do, it's not international anymore. You have a global scope. We work in with 28 countries today, and so we have different cultures, we have different ways of approaching things, etc. And it's the way things are moving now, and so you must be more efficient, and
Mm-hmm.
so you must be more competitive in anything you do, and you must use your tools in the most proper way possible. That's just it. So you have bigger companies, etc. Yes, you have them phagocytating, eating, but it has always been like this. But now we have more access and more visibility to these dynamics, and also just for you to understand a perspective of ours. And how do we manage it? And again, it starts from neuroscience as well, because one of the assumptions, let's say the premises that we have from a neuroscientific point of view is, conceptually speaking, is each brain works the same way.
Yeah.
And so we do not consider the person as culturally determined, but biologically determined. And so we start from the origins of behavior of anyone we are talking to. And so this is a huge advantage. Also, scientifically speaking, is a huge advantage for our businesses and for each and every dynamic we operate in and we create in this scale, let's say, in the global scale as well. So this is a huge advantage, and so if I could evaluate our competitiveness, our competitive advantage inside this scale, I say it's working, for this specific point of view.
I've heard, and with the people I'm talking to, AI is one technology. There are other technologies that AI will enable, but they are as, I guess, transforming as AI. You talk about robotics, you talk about quantum and quantum computing. These are all coming around at the same time. Has there ever been
Yes.
a time like this in history? Like, is this, what is the next 10 years going to look like? And which of those technologies are you excited about?
Johan, we have this. I don't want to say it's an illusion, let's say, but let's remember that humankind, started to fly, and just a few years later, he went to the moon. It's not that far, It's we're talking about not that many years. So things have always moved very, very fast in everything we made. For you to understand my point of view, you had Illuminism that gave us access to the human being as biologically determined. And so from it's not far from where we are now. So just imagine what it represented from Illuminism to our present day. And so this is a huge explosion of knowledge from that because of, religion and the divine access to human beings, etc. So before that, we couldn't access to human beings as biologically determined. It's just an example. So from that period of time to today, we have we are talking about neuromarketing now between us. We are talking about the specificity of brain activity. And so from this specifically, you ask me about the future and maybe priorities from a business point of view. You have all the biological advances, okay, but just imagine what can represent the union between everything we know from a neuroscientific point of view and robotics, and everything is informatic. So the first things come to my mind is BMI, so brain machine interface. Okay, so this is something we have invested in since its inception, since its beginning, and we are quite pioneers in that. So this is something I believe in very, very much, and I am available to put my money in it, I have already done and been doing since it's years already. And so just imagine what what future will become, putting together in the same batch biological advancement, AI, and brain-machine interfaces. So just imagine that, what can become from, military, efficiency in business, efficiency in knowledge, etc., etc. So access to knowledge. So we will have an exponential growth from this point of view. Also, this is a huge advancement in cognition.
Right.
Okay, and from many points of view, and also the therapeuticals of it, the therapeutical approach of it, what can become.
So what you're saying is that LLMs by themselves and it is not the way, but the combination between the human brain and this is what's going to cause an exponential growth in things.
Yes.
And how far do you see that? Like, I already carry my smartphone. People, they're tied to their smartphone. But you're saying there's a link there that it can be a lot faster and more efficient with a human brain machine interface. How, and you're investing into it. So how tight do you see that integration being, and what are your thoughts on that and predictions about that?
Okay. How tight? 100%. Just imagine, I think if I have to, you are asking me something that is very difficult to determine, of course. So, we don't have we can imagine how things will be. Okay. And, if, asking me to imagine it, I think, every one of us will have an interface applied to our brains. Okay. Because it will be the new normal, the new regular, way of, living. Just like our smartphone, because you will reach a level of, from example, from, operational point of view, from a medical point of view, etc., etc. You will have the most advanced piece of matter we know about in the universe, that is our brain, applied to the most advanced technology we have at our disposal now. There is AI and machine learning context of operating, etc. And so we have the union of this. I think in this union resides our future from any point of view. Diagnosis, anything is operation, because we have to understand that you have millions of years of evolution that guided us and make us be what we are. And we have our nervous systems that are the most advanced part of what we are. And our brain is the most advanced part of a nervous system. Okay? And so this is, I think it's inevitable to see the union of this all and the growth of our cognitive ability because of it. And as anything that comes to us at our disposal, you have to choose how to use it. Okay, if use it as a tool in order to improve what you are and what you do, etc., just like normal regular AI now, and the most smartest way to use it. Just like it was, and it is, the internet and everything we have. I can use YouTube to see something very, very useful as your podcast, for example. I can choose to see it, or I can choose not to, I don't mean no lack of respect about it, but I can see, so I can choose to see a duck, just circling around a pot. You can choose it. Let's say you can choose it, but today I choose to watch something very useful and of the highest level possible, like your podcast, and specifically our interview, of course.
Is there a downside to human-machine interaction?
Yes, of course. As any technology, the manipulative side of it, because that's where regulation resides.
I see.
Okay, and so just like the internet, as I told you, if you if you use these tools or everything we have at our disposal in a manipulative way, it becomes negative for humankind. Okay, but so it's something ethical here that we have to address. I can use it just like neuroscience, just like everything we have at our disposal. You can use it in a destructive way, and you can use it in a constructive way. Okay, so everything we are, and so if you apply greed to this, for example, it depends. Greed for money, it's one thing. Greed for knowledge, let's accept it, and just it's not called greed, but just for you to understand, the hunger for beautiful things, the hunger for possibilities, etc., knowledge, etc. And so there are downsizes of it, and this is a huge one, for example.
It seems like this may be the conversation that happens in the next 5 to 10 years. It's
Yes.
like, where does this go? And it's going to play out, day by day. And and month by month and quarter by quarter. We were still very, to your point, very greed driven, very profit driven, which is a good thing. However, we do need to sort of balance that out with the ethical side of things. And
yes. As anything, from my point of view, is anything, Johan. So you have Europe nowadays. There are willing, that is, Europe, the government is willing to regulate what we do. You have Australia that is preventing the youngest to access, for example, social media, etc. And so you have different realities nowadays, or in terms of how you approach these new frontiers, and so it's the way things go. So how do I do it? There is one premise here that is very, very important, and that is, ethically speaking, we have human beings that are quite fragile from a cognitive point of view. Okay, and so we have extreme difficulties between our present action and our long-term goals. This is one of the fundamentals, one of the premises we have at our disposal. For example, in behavioral economics, the reason why behavioral economics are very important nowadays, extremely important. So, and this is the basis of what we do as well, and basis of successes. You have to be very clear about it. You have to reach a certain level of clarity between your present action and your long-term goal. And so this requires an enormous effort from a cognitive point of view. And so, yes, we are facing this, but with quite a fragile human being there that is being approached by these technologies. So this is something to look at very, very in a robust ethical approach.
We've already hit 50 minutes, and it's fascinating that time went that fast. But I think I love your webpage. It's a brain, and
Thank
it's
you.
gold.
Yes,
and
yes.
it's just
Thank you very much for it.
Yeah, it really shows what you feel about the human brain and how important it is. And that's the one takeaway I want to take from this interview for myself, is that there is so much power there in our brain. It's a golden device, and it's to be cherished, and it's to be used. There is a lot of potential in it, right? And I think that's
absolutely.
Yeah. Where can we keep up with you, Victor? And where can we know more about what you're up to?
Just the first step would be ask me. It's everything is open, but we are expanding a lot, and we are working very strictly with the Middle East. Specifically, we are embracing, for example, Vision 2030 in Saudi Arabia. So we are making it ours. And so it's everything we do is long term. And from a legacy point of view, so it's very important for us to understand that everything we do means legacy as well. Because of the origin of our capital, this family capital, because of, the scientific approach of what we do. And actually, we are moving fast. We are always willing to follow all the possibilities that we have at our disposal from technologies, from many points of view, from finance, etc. point of view, and also we have many possibilities nowadays with gene therapy, for example, and from the biological aspects of what we are, and everything that biology itself can offer us, and something that we are approaching these days is a company. It can be public. So since you asked me about it, it's EVIS, the name of the company, and we are already discussing. We are very impressed by what they are achieving. It's interesting because we are talking about RNA. And so we have their proprietary platform to load extracellular vesicles. There are the natural messengers of the brain of our bodies, and they are able to load these extracellular vesicles with RNAs, which is something extremely difficult that they managed to achieve. And this is also something that I am following very strictly and very with proximity, because we think this is something that has an immense and very potential future there. So this is only an example, of course, but it's a valid one. And also it reveals from a financial and investment point of view what means all that legacy and long-term vision that we have. It's not only real estate, for example, real estate Vision 2030 it is something that it's immense as an approach, and it's for long-term because of the size of it. Okay, and but from relationship between technology and AI and brains, etc., as we discussed before, we have BMI, we have brain-machine interfaces, and also, why not, from a specifically determined biological approach to life, so biotechnology, etc., we have this kind of examples. So from the Giga projects to brains to biology itself, etc. And the example is EVIS that we are approaching right now. So this is quite a interesting period of our time for us. I mean, for our company.
Oh, I bet it's every investor and capital allocator is just like very excited right now. I think like they see a potential to shape the future, which is what this podcast discusses as well. I wanted to say thank you, Victor, for coming on the show. It's been quite fascinating, and this will be clipped up and delivered to my mass audiences and across all channels. And I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time today and coming on and explaining.
I loved the possibility and the perspective of this interview since I knew you for the first time. And so it's for me, it was very interesting. You delivered absolutely that interest that I had perceived from the first time talking to you and with you. And so it was a privilege for me, not just not because many people will see it, etc. Not just that, but because I found it very interesting, and I thank you for that. Absolutely. So it was my privilege for it.
Thank you so much for saying that, Victor.
Absolutely.
Why don't you hang on and we'll talk a little bit more.